Okay.
Okay. And we're live. How are we doing, guys?
Good, thank you. How are you, Lise?
Very, very well. Very, very well. How's sunny LA?
It's very sunny, and our dog keeps barking, so apologies in advance.
That's okay. That's okay.
But that's one of the problems of live TV. Anything can happen, including dog bark.
Who knows what's going to happen in the next 30 minutes? Well, first of all, I want to say huge thanks for agreeing to do this. Before we start, I'm just going to quickly introduce myself. I'm Lisa. I'm founder of the Wentworth Collective, and we are an event management consultancy. And what we do is we create exceptional experiences for our clients, experiences that have lasting impacts from when the first invitation lands to when the last participant leaves the building or now the screen. And we've certainly seen a change in the past 6 months with lockdown. And during that time, you know, there's been a pause on the industry. And what we do is we create these experiences with our collective, the amazing people who we work with. And when the pandemic started, I reached out to the people who I work with, the disruptors, the future thinkers, leaders, chefs, meditators, people that create these amazing experiences, and we all work together to find solutions for our clients. And certainly what we've seen is experiences that are normally live are now going into a virtual space. And personally, I'm finding that I'm having to produce more experiences that are more like a TV program, which is why I immediately thought of Joe and Matilda. I've known Joe and Matilda for nearly, 30 years now. We studied French and Italian together at university, and we also lived with each other as well for nearly 4 years. And Joe and Matilda are, well, you now live in LA, right, guys?
Yes.
And they started their careers as showrunners, receptionists, and I'm probably not going to do you guys justice here. I hope I'll remember everything. Started on Street Mate, Big Brother, Fame Academy, and they were the original crew on Strictly Come Dancing, and used that format and brought it to the stage, Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah, we were brought over.
Since then, yeah,
on. No, yeah, I was going to say that's the reason. We did Strictly, and then they asked us to come and help set up the American version when they sold it to the States, and we're still here.
That's right. And you're still here. And since then, you've worked on programs. Tilda, you're currently working on World of Dance.
Yeah.
J-Lo. And Joe, you are working on
So I'm now a VP over at Fox. So I'm part of the network or the channel. Then we commission various shows and oversee them from the development phase right through to production and when they air.
Fantastic. Okay, so just a little bit of housekeeping. Probably going to be about half an hour this conversation, and thank you to everyone here who's watching on the replay. Any questions, just post them in the chat and we'll try to answer them afterwards. As I said, we've seen a change in the way that events are being broadcast. We're seeing a lot on Zoom, but you can't really engage an audience in this virtual space. It's a video software company after all. So that's when, I reached out to Joe and Matilda, first of all, when I was thinking about producing these experiences, just because to see how they, producing these experiences are more like a live TV program. And I think the first question that I'd like to ask you, Joe and Matilda, is how has, we've seen a change in the past 6 months. How has the pandemic affected you and the live TV world?
We were just wrapping up our season 4 of World of Dance. Literally, we had to bring our finale forward by a day. LA was going into lockdown, so we had to shoot our finale, like $1 million prize with no audience. It was all crazy. It all happened on the fly. So that was a very 24-hour fast learning curve. So we got ahead of that. And then I've been lucky because we were mainly in post-production, which is all the editing of the program. So that happened at home. So it was really tough for the whole post team because all the editors are working remotely, but that's how we got the show done. So I haven't been so badly affected because mine was manageable. Joe's been a lot more involved in more current productions happening during lockdown.
Yeah, from a network point of view, we had to make big decisions, because obviously all the shows that we had in pre-production or production that required an audience had to stop immediately. So from a strategy point of view, everybody stopped and reassessed, and we thought, hold on, we need to change our whole air schedule for the summer, and our really good shows that we were planning to air, we had to put a pause on because the ad sales revenue just dropped. Everyone felt the uncertainty. They didn't know if advertisers were going to use their regular commercial spend. So to be quite honest, we put a lot of repeats on the air, but then for other shows, we ended up using the technology that was around to try and improvise. So for example, on The Masked Singer, which you have in the UK as well now, we created a special after show which used live streaming technology, where we were able to get our host, Nick Cannon, to interview celebrities via Zoom. But we didn't just use the regular Zoom connection, which we all know it can be terrible, can freeze and can drop out. So it looked like a regular Zoom, but what we actually did is send cameras and audio equipment to the celebrities' houses, which was really simple to set up, and guided them through a sort of really simple setup of how to light themselves, make sure the audio was recorded properly. And immediately after Nick did the interview, we would grab that footage, get it into the edit, and turn it around in a matter of hours in order to create a post show for The Masked Singer. And so
you also had Nick in a really cool green studio, didn't you? So it looked like he was in this huge, cool studio, but in fact it was just a green screen.
Well, this is one of the great advances in technology. With green screen technology, which I think everybody's familiar with, in television now, even though someone is in a really small, restricted space with just a green screen underneath their feet and behind them, you can actually create a virtual studio, which makes it look like they're in a huge space. You see it quite a lot in sports shows and political shows, things like Football Focus and Newsnight and political coverage, where you see digital elements appear on screen to help the hosts sort of tell the story. That became the sort of go-to mode of production, not only for entertainment shows like that, but we also did a big charity music special with iHeartRadio, where we had what we called the living room concert, where Elton John presented it from his kitchen, and then he would go live to Green Day's house, or we'd have a country singer at his swimming pool singing from the diving board. And they were literally, in these early days, using that Zoom technology, improvising with green screen elements, and you'd see these singers using their AirPods literally and performing a song. So it was real, fly by the seat of your pants stuff.
And then a bit later on in the summer, those same event shows where usually, you have a huge, like the Brits or whatever. I'm not saying specifically that one, but the equivalents, they kind of stepped it up. So I can't remember what was that one Done and Dusted did, where suddenly you have got like the Jonas Brothers singing it at home, but they're in their garage on their green screen, and it looks like they're on a massive, huge, expensive, multi-million-dollar stage.
Well, I think that's where we were quite ahead of the game with these virtual studios and being able to create a set that looked amazing, even though you were using a small practical green screen. And
no, the question I want to ask then is, like, how did you learn all these, like, new, like, was it like, what, did you learn on the job, or like to brief people? Like, how did you like create these amazing things? It's obviously, you're thinking, like you said, flying on the seat of your pants, but then it must have been a huge learning curve.
Well, it had huge parallels with the technology that we were already using in live television production. Like if you watch Strictly Come Dancing and some of those shows, they already are using digital elements on during the performances. So sometimes you'll see something that isn't really there in studio, but clearly it's been created using CGI. So what we did is we kind of accelerated our learnings from that and used them in sort of these smaller scale Zoom environments to make the production values of a higher quality.
Well, I think it's quite refreshing as well, because obviously we're talking about like the big expensive networks, mostly what we do. But normally everything's a giant crew and a huge makeup team, and the talent needs their stupidly expensive hairdressers and this and that. And suddenly all that was gone. So it's like, you know, we had to do some pickup shots with J-Lo, and she's at home in Miami, and she actually was like, great, you know, she had someone in her family hold the camera, no makeup, she's amazing, she doesn't need it anyway, outside in her back garden. You know what, the sound's not perfect, this isn't perfect. On TV, like, people would be like, no, this, and it would cost a million times more, because that's what we had to do, and it was fine.
Yeah, and like Saturday Night Live, which was that, you know, that huge famous show from New York, all the comedians were in their own house and they managed to turn around a live Zoom show. But what we sort of quickly found was, after a few weeks, there was a curiosity value with the audience of seeing how people were going to improvise and how these shows were going to be made. Then a kind of fatigue set in once you saw and got a bit bored of these low production values, and realizing that the Zooms you were having day to day at work were not that different from a lot of these TV shows.
Yeah, and that's interesting, actually. And we'll pick up on that just towards the end about what you think the future holds. But I think for the purpose of today, certainly for in our industry, as I've said before, there's so much that we can learn. I mean, personally, at the moment, I'm organising an event for one of my clients, which is like a live TV program, which is hence the reason why I called you all those months ago. And I think what, you know, from our calls before, I'd be interested to know is to go through the process of, you know, how does the process start? You know, like what the challenge that we're having at the moment in the events world is creating these engaging experiences on a screen, which ordinarily it's quite easy. You have an agenda, you have a stage, it's very much 3D. And now we're having to condense it into a small screen. We're having to keep people's attention. You know, often delegates will, in the conference world, will go off on a coffee break. You know, they're coming back. Whereas, you know, now, if we're inviting someone to an event, they can go off, they can turn it off, they can be distracted by their kids, their dog, or something like that. Talk me through the process. How does it start to get that engaging idea at the beginning and to think, well, okay, yeah, this is going to really keep someone's attention for an hour-long show?
Yeah, you're only now dealing with what we've always had to deal with, which is how to stop people turning over. It's the number one thing of any TV show you make. So, I mean, obviously, we're talking our experiences mainly in kind of entertainment, light entertainment, big performances, stuff like that. But, you know, you've got to think about how long you've got. So let's say it's an hour-long show or 2 hours.
I think before you even get to that stage, though, there's the sort of development stage. Like at the network, we hear like 400 ideas a year, and then we select a handful, maybe 20 ideas to put money into and develop. So you start off with the kind of, you hear an idea, you like it, and then you put a bit of money behind it to get the producers to sort of flesh it out a little bit more and get them to potentially put together a pilot, or what we call a proof of concept, where we get to see the idea not in its fullest form with all the bells and whistles, but sometimes it's a simple kind of run through that will give us an understanding of what the show is going to be and what the format is going to be, and then we use that as a basis to kind of work out what we like, what we don't like, how we can make it better. We sometimes send it to focus groups and get feedback from outside people to sort of really get a feel of whether that's going to be a viable TV show. And the other thing we do from the network point of view is engage our marketing departments to ask them, do you think this is a show that you can sell and promote? You know, it's not just enough to have a great idea for a show. You need to have all the sort of elements of your company behind it to be able to promote it. And then
once you've got your show,
once you've sold the show and you make it,
which is my job as a producer, he's done all the network stuff. You think, what is the show? What is the point of the show? Is it to educate? Is it to entertain? Is it like probably ultimately everything? Because however serious something is, if you entertain people, they'll stay, right? So then you look at what does the content need to be? So let's talk, because everyone who's watching who's English knows Strictly, right? It's a dance competition, so you need dance performances. So you need to have your dance performances equally throughout the show, but also you need to learn who the people are and get to know them, because even though they're famous people, you need to see the real person behind it. So therefore you're going to have a little training package before each dance, because without the training package, without seeing Lisa struggling in her yoga pants in a studio and having 2 left feet,
not that Lisa struggles in her yoga pants, just want to say that.
No, but you need to see that to then get the surprise or the gratification or the moving moment when she actually dances and she crushes it and everyone's like, oh, that's amazing. So you need to spread out like the highs and lows, the sweet bits, the sad bits, the funny bits, the entertaining bits. You need to like start with a bang and end with a bang, have something in the middle, and then just keep teasing to stuff you know is going to be great. Like if you've got who's someone that you want to see dancing, some amazing booking on the show that everyone knows is there, you're going to keep them to the end, and throughout the episode you're going to be saying, don't go anywhere because, you know, still to come. You might not say exactly when, still to come. Lisa's going to be up, you know, so no one's going anywhere. So you just spread it out and you kind of look at the flow of.
Well, because the thing is, you know, you're up against all the other channels that are on at the same time.
Yeah.
Who are all putting out their best stuff in prime time. Then you know people are looking at their phones. They've also got the choice of going to Netflix or Amazon as well. So it makes it even harder now. Back in the day, people didn't have as many choices, and they would just they'd leave the TV on, and it was easier to keep the viewer. But now, in recent years, we're really pushing as hard as we can to make sure every single viewer is engaged from the second the show starts till the very end, and don't give them a reason for turning it off.
And on live TV, which I think there's more of actually in England than there is here, really. But you can't, like when we did Dancing with the Stars here live, that was a bit of a novelty because no one was doing that kind of TV live. But you'll have the host constantly reminding people, don't go anywhere, you never know what's going to happen, because things happen completely unplanned. And I think for me as a viewer, that's what you want to see, stuff go a bit wrong and see what happens.
And then you always save your best stuff for the end. That's why eliminations on reality shows always happen at the end, because the whole audience wants to see who's going, and why shows like The Masked Singer are so successful, because you only get to reveal the celebrity at the very end.
And then you finish the show as soon as you've done your big reveal, because people turn over. So there's no point having a 10-minute interview with the winner, because no one cares. They just want to know who wins.
But I think one of the trends to do that, to engage the audience, is this trend for play along. The Masked Singer, as an audience member, you're engaged in a different way. You're not just passively watching the show. You are guessing along with the judges and want to see if your guess was right, and so you feel invested and will watch to the end. And also with audience voting, that's another thing. If you've got a favorite, you want to see your person dance, and you want to wait till the lines open at the end of the show, so that you can actively put your person back on the show. And
then I think teasers, like sometimes they can be annoying because it's too much. You're like, don't give me away too much what happens. But on a show like, again, it's much bigger here, but you know, kind of more like shocky, kind of like The Bachelor and stuff like that. They'll say like, you know, tonight on The Bachelor, and then, you know, at the end of each commercial break, they'll say coming up, and you'll see this, you know, someone slap someone in the face, and you don't know the context, you don't know why, but you were going to turn over, but now you're like, I've got to see why she did that, kind of thing. So it's not teasing as much, like giving little crumbs of what's to come.
Yeah, and also what you do when you're plotting your show, you start in the room with all the rest of your kind of creatives, and you work on the running order. So you go, okay, what are the big moments of the show? And for me anyway, as a producer, I always think, what are the standout moments? What are people going to be talking about tomorrow? And you really sort of sometimes drill down on those specific moments so that they're as big and polished as they can possibly be. And you think about how you're going to promote them, which media outlets you send them out to, and make that a talking point. And when does that occur in your show? You want to make sure that that's going to occur at a time that's really important for you when you're trying to retain viewers.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because from what you're saying as well, in talking about the show flow, it's not just like, if you think about Strictly, it's not just the dancing. You're actually talking about when you're forming the show flow and the agenda, you're thinking about all the other bits and pieces, like the training, for what you're saying, the other VTs that you're in, and also from what you're saying as well, you know, what they're going to talk about tomorrow. Because we all talk about, you know, in the events world, you know, what do you want them, how do you want them to feel, or what do you want them to say after the event? I guess you're thinking then the following day, what's that water cooler moment when we're in the offices that people are going to be talking about.
And you'll save those moments. Like if you've got like a training package where something really moving or emotional happens, or you know that this person's dedicating this dance to their sick daughter, and then the daughter's going to be in the studio watching it, and you know you're going to be crying buckets and it's going to be amazing. Like, you'll tell the story and then you'll go to a commercial break to hold people over, because that acts as the greatest tease. And then so let's say you've got a great weepy sad one, you'll then balance that out with a really funny, silly, high tempo, upbeat disco number next. Like, you know, the music and the stories, you kind of temper everything across, so you don't get all the sad stuff and then all the happy stuff. You'll kind of spread it out.
You're keeping that flow up and down.
Yeah.
But you don't only do that over an episode, you kind of do that for the entire series. When you get your cast at the beginning, you're saying to yourself, okay, episode 1, this is when we're introducing these people to the audience. That's what episode 1's about. And then you have to plot the course of the entire series along with the sort of story arcs and what you want people to learn about these celebrities and the different challenges you want to put them under at each phase of the competition.
Yeah, no, and actually you made a good point there, which brings me on to my next question. So, you know, we've spoken about, you know, the show flow and the bits and pieces to put it together, and we've spoken about, I suppose, the characters in the story. But sort of, let's talk about the technical. You know, again, as I say, like in the events world, we're quite lucky in that we're immersed in the experience. You know, when I'm organising a conference, we've got the stage, we've got the sound, you know, you've got that 3D view, you've got a participant in their chairs and they're looking around, they can see everything. The challenge that we're finding now is to create that engaging experience on a small screen. How do you do that?
Lots of cameras, like, you know, even an event of people just talking, like even if it's just someone sitting on the stage talking, it's going to be more engaging if you've got a camera far back. So you've got a wide shot, and then, you know, when if I start talking about something really insightful or interesting or moving, then you get a close up, and then you get reactions to the other people. So, you know, any, you know, studio TV show, you'll never see them, but you've maybe got, you know, 8 to 12 cameras.
Right.
You might really notice that you're seeing that if it's well produced and well directed, but you're kind of following the story and the emotion and the experience by showing it each moment from its best point of view. So you don't just stick on a wide shot, even in anything really. You kind of, you'll get reactions, you'll get close-ups, you'll get expressions, you'll get, you know, something from high up, something from down below. Like, you'll keep looking at it from different places. The viewer won't even really notice. They'll just know that they've watched this great thing on TV.
But I think even when you're limited, and if you say you haven't got as many cameras, then it kind of makes it even more challenging, because then you've just got to really figure out what is going to be the most engaging thing for the viewer. How do you make them as involved as possible? And we went for a few trends where we would use social media or use polling to allow the viewer to influence the outcomes on the show. So it would be like, you design the dance for this celebrity. What dress do you want them to wear? What dance style do you want them to do? Or we're going to change the partners this week. Which partner do you want for them? And I think knowing your audience and what is going to keep them hooked is the most important thing. And then editorially coming up with a plan that's going to be engaging and gripping for them.
And how do you do that? Like,
well, I suppose it depends on what your content is. If you know that your average viewer is a 50-year-old female ballroom dancing fan who just wants to be entertained, then you know from working in television that you've got to create a story, you've got to create drama. As Matilda said, you've got to create the highs and lows, and that's what's
a good costume reveal.
And that's what's going to keep, you know, some of the, and also you get the happy accidents as well, where with live television, something happens that you least expect. So, you know, one of the best things that ever happened for us in an early season of Dancing with the Stars was someone's wardrobe becoming malfunctioning. A girl's strap started falling down.
A young, attractive female.
Yeah, feel the audience's eyes glued to the television to see what was going to happen. You know, luckily she held onto her dress for the remaining.
She kept dancing.
She kept dancing, but it became a huge talking point. It became that water cooler moment that then generated more eyeballs and more viewers the following week.
Yeah. And that actually brings me on to you know, we've spoke about, you know, at that moment, I suppose the role of the host then, like when something goes wrong, I imagine like the role of the host is quite important at that point, but also to keep the whole thing together. I mean, when we always do events, we have a master of ceremonies, but I should imagine with a live TV show, having a strong host must be quite important, especially when things go wrong as well.
Completely critical. Yeah, like someone who knows what they're doing. It's a huge amount of pressure. Like the host will have an earpiece in, so the producer, so I'll be sitting in the control room where the director is, so you can see all the cameras and kind of a few key people like lighting and people that need to be involved in the timing of the show and stuff. But I'm speaking to the host, to the stage managers, there's someone out on the floor with them, to a number of producers backstage, so that if something you've always got a plan, especially on live TV, it's more important. Like in an event, if something goes wrong, if there's an earthquake, if there's a streaker runs out on the floor, there's always a plan of this is what would happen if, like ridiculous scenarios. You can't plan for everything. Yeah. And then you need to make sure the host knows it, and then when something does happen, which it always does, everyone understands when you're going to cut to a commercial break, or you're going to cut to a different very wide camera, you're going to throw to a package like on Dancing with the Stars. I remember we always had a safety package, which is something we produced at the beginning of the season. Like, here's what the judges do on their comedy day off. That's something that's evergreen that you can throw to at any moment. So the minute you say it, everyone who needs to know what that means gets it. There's not a big conversation. It's like, this is what we're doing and it's happening now. Right. So you chat to your host, he guides the action, because obviously the viewer looks at him as if he's...
You had that moment with Marie Osmond.
Yeah, we had Marie Osmond fainting on live TV, which was terrifying. Wow. She just literally dropped to the floor after she'd danced. She was about to get her scores. And then everyone, as the producer, everyone turns to you, go, what are you doing? And luckily our host was a brilliant, very seasoned professional. Straight away, I was like, she could be dead. We had no idea. So like Tom's like, Tom, I don't think I even had to tell him. It was like throw to break. He knew straight away, throw to commercial break. In that moment, everyone's on the floor. You get the medic out, you get everyone out, you find out what's happening. Then you have to make the decision of this is what we're going to do. Obviously the script's going to change. So you have to speak to the prompter, change the script, brief the host, let the lighting know, let the director know, because suddenly all the rehearsals you've done are out the window, because actually this difference on the fly thing is going to happen. But that's what makes it exciting, I think, for the viewer and for working in it and everyone, and you get a great buzz from
But I guess like in the amazing events that you kind of produce, you probably want to be a little bit more following the script and
I think things can happen too.
But I think you have to be open to moments happening and figuring out what you're going to do and how you're going to adjust.
That's it. Well, you do have to think on your feet, but I think it's like when we were talking last week, actually, Matilda, I was saying the difference is it's not live broadcast to millions of people around the world and globally. It's in a room, and even with a small audience, but we're being faced now, things are going to happen live, even with a small audience, and we're going to have to manage it. That's why it's really interesting to hear your insights. And I guess the next part is that you must have to have a really strong team that
Yes. Hiring your team is like the first thing you get on a new show. And it's literally, as the kind of showrunner or exec producer, to be honest, it's the only thing you care about for the first few weeks is hiring your people and getting them. Because if you've got a good team, you could be the greatest producer in the world, but if you can't get the right team, then you're only as good as they are. So you have lighting, all the different creatives, your producers, your even right down to the lowest level. You need people who are great, who know what they're doing, who you can trust, who you can delegate to, because you have to be, as the showrunner, you're across every single aspect of the show. So you need to trust your department heads to filter down and do their jobs and manage their teams. So you need great people.
Yeah, and like
the best use of your money and your time is hiring a great team.
Yeah, and I mean we're coming up to half an hour, and I've got some questions that have come through. But how do you you take that? How do you communicate to your team? There must be so many. I mean, I know when we organise events, there's so many moving parts, but we don't have costume, makeup, and that sort of thing. How do you organise them?
It's a lot of communication. It's different on a live show or depending on your schedule, but whether it's a weekly meeting or a daily meeting or I suppose nowadays it's a lot more Zoom meetings, but it's really important that, again, you have your very clear division of labor and your department heads. So, I will meet with my department heads on a very regular basis, and I know that he knows to tell his team this and she knows that, and they talk to each other. So rather than 100 people all talking to each other, it's 8 people talking to each other, and then they filter down. So it's just communication like in any business.
Yeah. So what it sounds like is having that strong storyline and that purpose about why you're running the event, a really, really good team, multiple technical aspects as well, a strong host, and people that can think fast on their feet as well. Is there anything else that you would say was, before I go into the questions and we wrap up, is there anything else that you would think is a winning formula that we could advise?
Well, I think just teasing and getting people excited from the get-go. So we always on TV shows have what we call a cold open, when you preview what's going to be in the episode, all the best moments. And so everybody might see something that they go, I have to stick around because I know this is coming up. So I think letting your audience know what's coming up. And at the end of every act on a television show, before we go to commercial break, we tease again, saying coming up is this, just to remind people. So I think constantly reminding people of the good content that's coming their way is really important.
And I think ultimately, just don't forget, sometimes you can lose sight. You can get so involved in the details, in the smaller things, like never forget the big picture. Ultimately, however serious your event is or the content, the subject is, just keep it entertaining and engaging, because you can be like, yeah, that's brilliant and it's so clever and this is amazing technology, and it's like, yeah, but is it fun to watch? Because if it's not, it's gone.
Yeah, that's true. So we've got a question here. This comes from Cassandra. Hi, Cassandra. I know him quite well. Thanks for doing this. It's great. You talked about fatigue, very much what we are currently seeing. We moved from Zoom to 2D platforms, and now we're seeing a move from 2D to 3D as one way to combat fatigue. The question is, what, in your opinion, is the ideal length of time to keep people engaged using the various examples you mentioned? Corporate clients normally do a full day, and we know we cannot copy a full day format live in an online experience.
Well, I mean, I would say, like, for the kind of TV we make, which is, entertainment, shorter is always better. If you're doing a package or a story or an interview or a segment, it's like 60 to 90 seconds. Again, it completely depends on the subject, but shorter is always better. Keep it moving, keep it changing.
But also in terms of the length of shows, we used to do 2-hour shows regularly, and now I think there's more of a trend to just condense it to a 1-hour show and just keep all your best stuff in and less filler. So I find a 1-hour show for television is a really good format.
It's always better. And when you go into, like, with a non-live show, you go into post and then the first cut you see, it's always a much better problem if it's way too long, because then you're only going to keep your very best stuff.
Yeah. And what do you think? I mean, my question is, what do you think the future is for TV?
Well, what we've been doing is we've been exploring this kind of virtual world even more. And we've got to the point now where when we're designing a set, we figure out where we put the virtual audience in. So using computer graphics and previous audience shots, we will, in the edit, put in the audience shot so it looks like there was an audience there, and actually they were never there in studio at all. And then we sometimes use other shows or previous series of the show if we need close-ups of people reacting, and there's a disclaimer at the end of the show that says that, but that keeps you feeling like there's a real audience there. And then also in other instances where we definitely don't have an audience, we do what we call sweetening, where you have the sound effect of an audience there. So it's not as bad as canned laughter or anything like that, but there's a perceptible cheering and reaction if a contestant gets the question right in a game show. But it just keeps the pace moving. You really notice it. If you would remove that, the pace slows, and audiences are so psychologically used to hearing that noise that it's kind of still important to retain that even. So we're looking at trying to make it feel as seamless as possible, but obviously without an audience. And then the other thing that we're looking at doing is potentially filming in countries where they are allowed small audiences, or looking at using clusters of family groups who obviously live together and are safer, so that you still have a live audience there. So I think there's ways that we're looking at now that are going to allow us to use audiences in a limited way.
Hopefully this problem might be ongoing forever, but I suppose once we do go back to normal things, we might improve and change and streamline and make stuff more efficient from what we've learned during this.
We're already forced to use less crew because of safety guidelines, so people are learning. for better or worse, to do other people's jobs and be a bit leaner, and hopefully the trouble is every single production we do costs hundreds of thousands of dollars in COVID safety, and the time it adds to the schedule is ridiculous. So we're having to find economies in other ways. It's not, I'm sure as you know in your industry, it's not tenable to have the same budgets that we had pre-COVID.
And I think, like you were saying before at the beginning of the conversation, you can see that you can make do. So it does question the expense. I mean, certainly I'm seeing
change things for the better.
Sorry?
I think it might change things for the better ultimately down the line.
Well, what we're finding now with our budgets is we're seeing where we're investing our money. So we're investing it, like you say, in the entertainment, but we're investing it in the content. It's not so much in whereas people, you'd fly them around the world to go to, it would be the destination that would be the wow. Now we're saying, well, actually, do we need to fly hundreds?
Spend that money on producers. There's probably, I'm sure in England as well, there's a lot of producers with a lot of time on their hands at the moment. So very skilled people who know how to do this stuff.
Well,
whenever we want to do a show, we want to see the money that we're spending on screen. You get very frustrated if the money is going to people's wages or fees, unnecessary fees that just are, you want to put as much money as possible.
Not wages, you mean ridiculous, overpaid talent.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Like people.
Well, that was like the question then I was going to ask was, with budgets being tight, where would you say, organizations should invest their money if they had a choice?
Well, I mean, I think the right team to make your event, and it doesn't need to be a big team, but if you just had like a great experienced TV producer embedded in the team who knows all the stuff we're talking about, none of it complex, but they understand the importance of, let's spend a bit of money on lighting, and let's, you get a director to, cut between two cameras, or like I would say, people who are skilled in this new kind of format that you're developing, or training people up, obviously your own staff up. It's in making these things.
But also, I think there's a lot of, with the sort of people working for a lot of digital companies, you find that they have a really good skill set in being able to produce, edit, and shoot things themselves. So there's this kind of new generation of really sort of nimble people who are able to sort of do a lot of different things, and
on their phones.
We're finding that a lot more that we're looking to those type of people when budgets are really low, and we need to sort of keep costs down and still get a good level of production value.
Yeah, look at the teenagers and the 20-somethings.
Well, you might have mentioned it before, but things like social media, and I know we discussed this when we talked about it last week, that plays an important role as well. Have you found that as well in your programs, that social media is working alongside?
I mean, it always has been. And every network has a massive social media team department that they put onto every show. You get your own social media team who becomes embedded with the production team. That's huge.
Well, I think it's that thing, it's a cliche, but you want to keep the conversation going. So once your show airs, you want people to be talking on whatever platform it is about your show, and you need to be sort of feeding that beast and putting out clips and working out your audience. And the clip that you put on your Instagram site is different from what you put on your Facebook site. So it's all a question of sort of knowing your audience and just keeping them engaged. Yeah,
actually that goes to something you said earlier, and you when you're doing your show flow, you will be like, oh, that bit could go viral. That's the bit the social media team's going to push out there. So that little package is going to be huge because of X, Y, or Z. Yeah. J-Lo's going to post that and get behind it.
But that audience polling is big to ask them, what did you like? Did you like this dance better or that dance better? And it seems, you can do that relatively easily on social media now.
Yeah.
So, that's another way to keep people feeling a little bit more involved and less of a kind of passive viewer.
And I guess as well, they feel invested in the program if they've got their say. It's like you were saying about the Masked Singer, that when you become involved in the character, but you want to know I can't remember the characters now, but you want to know who they are, and that's why you continue watching.
Well, there's a show here, The Bachelor, that's been running for years, and their fans call themselves Bachelor Nation, and they're known for the viewing parties that they have together. So they've really done an excellent job in kind of branding that audience and keeping them engaged. And using social media really effectively to kind of keep what's a 20-year-old show relevant for younger people.
Yeah. So essentially the audience is a vital part, but the audience at home is a vital part of the story. And when you're planning it, they're definitely involved in it. And I like what you said about those viral pieces, like, you know, about what can go viral or what they're going to, well, sometimes I think how we compare it sometimes with what we've been doing recently in events is what's that Instagrammable shot. Whenever you do an event, there's always going to be, as people walk into the room, where that Instagram moment's going to be, and you see it all beautifully packaged up.
Yeah, and that's, we were talking earlier about the role of a good host, which again, with any of your events you're going to have, they're talking to the audience or to the viewer, and they're on their level. They're always kind of feeling what they're feeling, or explaining to them, or helping them, or asking them the questions that, you know, they themselves might know what's going on, but they're always going to be on the viewer's side. So they're kind of an extension. They're the link between what's happening on screen and the people watching it at home. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Jo. I don't think there are any more questions that have come through. I've taken more of your time, but thank you so much. It's been.
You're welcome. Anytime, Lisa.
I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks, Lisa.
No, I really have a wonderful day. It looks like it's sunny there. I mean, as I say, is there just one nugget of advice just to finish the conversation that you would give to the event management world that we could learn from your expertise? Just
keep it entertaining, like adding the fun, just wherever you can. Like people will never get bored of that.
Yeah, and it's that whole, it's a cliche, but that kind of content is king. You need to make it as interesting and engaging as possible, and don't give them any excuse to turn over or switch off.
That's it. Brilliant. Thanks so much, guys. I really, really appreciate it.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.